dormant gland suddenly awakened, triggering a surge of primal heat. Yet Pei callously pushed me toward his younger brother. "You're just a male beta," he said dismissively. "You can't handle an alpha. My brother is a beta. He's a better match for you." But what he didn't know was that his brother was an alpha masquerading as a beta, and my delayed awakening was about to change everything. For the next month, I didn't call or text Pei once. Eventually, his patience wore thin, and he came looking for me, only to be overwhelmed by the potent pheromones in the air. The usually composed man lost control, his voice raw with fury. "He's your brother's fiancé. How dare you?" The younger man held me close, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "Brother, don't be so harsh. You're scaring your future sister-in-law." "Pei, I'm so hot, I can't stand it." I clung to Pei, my cheek brushing against his chest as the intoxicating scent of red wine enveloped me. But he coldly pushed me away, gripping the back of my collar to detach me from him. Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at him, my voice trembling. "Pei, I had a glass of champagne earlier, and now I feel so strange. Did someone drug me?" His expression hardened, his voice sharp with irritation. "You Nai, are you a child? Don't you have any sense of caution?" I bit back my sorrow, tears streaming down my face. "Pei, I feel awful. Let's just go home. You're my fiancé, aren't you?" His gaze was icy as he looked down at me. "You Nai, it's been 5 years since our engagement, and you still haven't awakened. You're destined to remain an ordinary beta, but I'm an A-rank alpha. During my rut, I need an omega's pheromones to soothe me, and you, a male beta, could never withstand an alpha." I swallowed my sobs, my voice barely a whisper. "So, you're saying you won't take care of me?" Pei turned away, his tone devoid of emotion. "You Nai, I can help you, but I can't be responsible for you. My wife can only be an omega." His words cut deep, spreading a slow, aching pain through my entire being. He was willing to use me, but refused to commit. What kind of logic was that? "Are you saying you want to break off the engagement?" His patience snapped, his eyes filled with disdain. "Yes, stop clinging to me. It's pathetic. My brother is a beta. He's a better match for you." As his omega secretary approached with documents, Pei walked away without a second glance. After Pei left, the whispers and mocking stares of the other guests closed in around me. The bright lights of the venue seemed to magnify their scorn. "Look at that desperate fool. A mediocre male beta dreaming of an A-rank alpha? What a joke. How could a beta ever satisfy an alpha?" The humiliation was suffocating, each breath feeling like a blade against my skin. The Pei I once knew was gone. He used to care for me, protect me, and even surprise me with little gestures of affection. When others mocked me for being a beta, he would stand up for me. Nai just hasn't awakened yet. He's not a beta. But after 5 years of waiting, my lack of awakening had turned his warmth into cold indifference. I often wondered if things would be different if I were an omega. But what was so inferior about being a beta? Tears blurred my vision as I clenched my teeth, trying to hide my pain. "You Nai, don't humiliate yourself anymore. Just stop." A warm suit jacket draped over my shoulders. I looked up to see Pei Huan, Pei's younger brother. Like me, he was supposed to be a beta. He wrapped an arm around me, his voice laced with sarcasm. "What's wrong with being a beta? You people are disgusting, using your second gender to feel superior." With that, he scooped me up and carried me out. Inside his Bugatti, I clutched the seatbelt, my body trembling with an unfamiliar heat. The scent of bamboo filled the car, soothing yet overwhelming. Pei Huan frowned. "What's wrong with you?" "I don't know," I whimpered. "My body feels so strange. Am I dying?" He pulled over, removed my scent patch, and examined the back of my neck. After a moment, he cursed under his breath. "You Nai, you've awakened. I'll call my brother to come get you." I grabbed his hand before he could reach for his phone. "Don't call him. I don't want him anymore. He wants to break off the engagement. I can't keep chasing after him." "Are you sure you're done with him?" "Yes. I don't want to love him anymore." My voice was soft but resolute. My heart had endured enough pain. It was time to let go. I clung to Pei Huan, my eyes pleading. "I feel so awful. Can you help me?" His dark eyes bore into mine. "I'm just a beta. Desperate." I tugged at his clothes, pressing my face into the crook of his neck. "I don't care. They say betas are smaller, so it won't hurt as much." Pei Huan cupped my face, his voice low and teasing. "You're going to be the death of me." He removed my engagement ring and tossed it out the window. From the garage to the elevator, the hallway to the bedroom, his kisses trailed down my body, igniting a fire I couldn't control. The room filled with a mingling sense of bamboo and dark chocolate. As I explored his muscular frame, I froze in confusion. "Aren't you a beta?" Pei Huan chuckled, his voice deep and velvety. "You're adorable. You know that?" The rich aroma of dark chocolate enveloped me, and I realized the truth. You're an alpha pretending to be a beta. Guilty. But it's too late for regrets now. His playful tone was laced with mischief as his teeth grazed my gland, flooding me with his pheromones. The next month was a whirlwind of passion, leaving me breathless and utterly consumed. A month later, Pei finally resolved the issues at his company. The former project lead had defected to a competitor, forcing them to work overtime to develop a new strategy. To reward his team, Pei booked a hotel banquet. After a few drinks, Pei rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of exhaustion. His thoughts drifted to Yunai. Yunai had always been so attentive, carrying hangover remedies and stomach medicine wherever they went. He would tug at Pei's sleeve, urging him to drink less, and when Pei inevitably overindulged, Yunai would stay by his side all night, ensuring he was cared for. Yunai was kind, beautiful, and everything Pei had ever wanted. His friends often remarked that if Yunai ever awakened, he would undoubtedly be a top-tier Omega. Pei had waited 5 years, but as time passed, his hope turned to frustration. It had been a month since Yunai last contacted him. Pei assumed Yunai was sulking over the breakup, waiting for him to come crawling back. Fine, he thought. He'd humor Yunai this once. Pei imagined Yunai would cling to him as usual, smiling sweetly and saying, "Pei, I love you most in the world." Though Yunai couldn't become his wife, Pei thought he could keep him as a lover. After all, Yunai had always been so devoted to him. A month later, the chaotic heat cycle finally ended. The room was still filled with the mingling scents of bamboo and dark chocolate. I rummaged through the closet for an oversized shirt, wincing at the soreness in my body as I tiptoed toward the door. Pei Huan stood by the window, his voice cold and sharp as he spoke into the phone. Keep an eye on Pei Corporation. Buy up their shares. The icy determination in his eyes sent a chill down my spine. Compared to Pei Yi, the golden heir of the Pei family, Pei Huan was just an ordinary beta, known for his recklessness and lack of ambition. Their father, Pei Fanghai, often lamented Pei Huan's behavior in public. To the outside world, Pei Huan was nothing compared to Pei Yi, but the man on the phone was nothing like the careless playboy everyone thought he was. His words were laced with authority, his tone commanding as he discussed business strategies. "I'll make Pei Fanghai pay for what he's done." The venom in his voice startled me, and my legs gave out, sending me crashing to the floor. Pei Huan heard the noise, ended the call, and strode over. I swallowed hard, instinctively shrinking back. Had I just stumbled upon his secret? Would he silence me to keep it? Instead, he scooped me up effortlessly, carrying me back to the bedroom. His dark eyes gleamed with amusement. "Walking around like this in the morning. Are you trying to tell me you're still unsatisfied?" I scrambled under the covers, pulling them tightly around me. "No, you've got it all wrong. Another round and I might not survive." Pei Huan chuckled, reaching out to pinch the gland on the back of my neck. "If you're scared, then behave yourself. You've been draining me for a month. How do you plan to make it up to me? Draining you?" I shot up from the bed indignant. "I'm the one who's been suffering here." He wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me back into his chest. "Fine, you're the victim. How should I compensate you? How about I give myself to you?" His gaze darkened, a silent warning in his eyes. If I dared to refuse, he might just lose his temper. Fine, I'll reluctantly accept. Newly marked Omegas are especially dependent on their alphas. After the heat cycle ended, I stayed at Pei Huan's place for a few more days. During that time, Pei Yi called me once. Pei Huan held me close as I answered, his sharp teeth grazing my gland, his eyes dark and possessive. In the past, I was always the one calling Pei Yi. In 5 years, he had rarely reached out to me first. "Do you need something? Are you free Saturday night? Let's have dinner." Pei Huan's arm tightened around my waist, his eyes narrowing. "Sorry, I'm busy." Pei Huan smirked, clearly pleased with my response. Pei Yi's voice turned cold. "You and I don't push this too far. I'm giving you a chance here. Don't be ungrateful." So inviting me to dinner was his idea of extending an olive branch. Every time we fought, I was the one who apologized, softening my voice to coax him out of his anger. "Pei Yi, I know you're tired of me. You've been waiting for me to end things. So you wouldn't have to bear the blame, right? Well, today, I'll grant your wish. From now on, I won't bother you anymore." When I returned home, I immediately asked my alpha to annul the engagement. Among the 6 secondary genders, male betas have the lowest fertility rate. Pei Fanghai had been eager for me to call off the engagement, given my lack of awakening. A week after the breakup, I ran into Pei Yi at a club. He was drunk after a business meeting, his steps unsteady. He stumbled toward me, and I stepped back, avoiding his grasp. In the past, I would have happily thrown myself into his arms, seeking his affection. Pei Yi used to scold me for it. Yunai, you're not a child anymore. Can't you act more mature? I never understood why asking my boyfriend for a hug was considered immature. Now, Pei looked at me, confused that I had dodged him. Yunai, I drank too much today. My head hurts and my stomach's upset. He stood there, expecting me to fuss over him like I used to, but the Yunai who would have done that was long gone. Pei, we're not engaged anymore. You shouldn't be saying these things to me. Not engaged? I never agreed to that? I almost laughed. He didn't want to marry me. He wanted to sleep with me without commitment. And now, he didn't even want me to break off the engagement? What did he think I was? A servant he could summon and dismiss at will. I didn't want to deal with a drunk. As I turned to leave, Pei grabbed my wrist. I tried to pull away, but his grip was firm. Let go, or I'll call security for harassment. Harassment? Pei's voice turned icy. You were the one throwing yourself at me before. Why didn't you call it harassment then? His words stung. 5 years of devotion had earned me no respect, just a label of being desperate. Pei, was my love really that worthless to you? As we struggled, Pei noticed the scent patch on the back of my neck. His grip tightened, his eyes narrowing. Aren't you a beta? Why are you wearing a scent patch? I kicked him hard, breaking free. What's it to you? I sneered. Pei's drunken haze lifted, replaced by a cold, seething anger. He released his pheromones, the oppressive force of an A-rank alpha, crashing over me like a tidal wave. The overwhelming pressure made my head spin, and I could feel my own scent, subtle and sweet, begin to seep out in response. You've awakened, Pei said, his voice laced with a mix of surprise and triumph. You're an Omega. But his momentary delight quickly twisted into fury as he caught the faint trace of another alpha's scent mingling with mine. The lingering aroma of dark chocolate intertwined with bamboo was unmistakable. You've been marked by another alpha. His voice was low and dangerous, each word dripping with rage. I forced myself to stand straight, meeting his gaze despite the dizziness threatening to pull me under. That night at the banquet, I told you I wasn't feeling well, but you chose to abandon me. I thought you were lying, he snapped. And you were just a beta. I cut him off with a bitter laugh. What? I wasn't good enough for you as a beta, but now that I'm an Omega, I'm suddenly worthy? Pei, don't you find that disgusting? When I loved you, you ignored me, pushed me away. Now that I've called off the engagement, you can't let go. Pei, how pathetic can you be? His pheromones surged uncontrollably, the pressure making my knees buckle, but I refused to give in. Biting down on the pain radiating from the back of my neck, I wouldn't show weakness to an alpha like him. Just as the tension reached its peak, Pei Huan appeared. He wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me close. Brother, if you don't control yourself, this is going to end up on the front page tomorrow. Dad won't be happy if we cause a scandal right after securing that bid. The overwhelming alpha pheromones had already begun to affect others nearby. Pei clenched his fists, his eyes locked on Pei Huan's hand resting possessively on my waist. He reached out, demanding that Pei Huan hand me over. But Pei Huan only smirked, his tone light and mocking. You can't just snatch someone away in public, brother. Why don't you ask if he wants to go with you? He turned to me, his eyes softening as he gave me a playful wink. I shook my head firmly. Pei, there's no chance for us. I'm not going with you. See, Nai says no, Pei Huan said, his grin widening. Pei's secretary hurried over, whispering something urgent in his ear. His expression darkened, and with a final glare at Pei Huan, he stormed off, his fists clenched in frustration. As soon as he was gone, Pei Huan scooped me up into his arms. I clung to his neck, curiosity getting the better of me. What'd you do? Just moved up the timeline a bit, he said casually. Anyone who touches what's mine has to pay the price. He carried me back to his car, his pheromones wrapping around me like a protective shield. His teeth grazed my gland, and I felt the familiar rush of his scent flooding my senses, erasing any trace of Pei's presence. When he finally pulled away, I was completely enveloped in the rich, comforting aroma of dark chocolate. I leaned against him, murmuring, "You're such a possessive alpha." He didn't deny it, brushing a kiss against my forehead. I'll make him regret what he did today. His voice was cold, his arms tightening around me. An alpha publicly harassing an Omega with their pheromones was tantamount to assault, and Pei Huan wasn't about to let it slide. I opened my eyes, studying him. So you're done pretending to be a beta? He smirked. When they come after what's mine, it's time to stop playing nice. I hesitated, then asked, why did you pretend to be a beta in the first place? He shrugged, his fingers idly playing with mine. Pei's mother would never allow a bastard like me to outshine her precious son. The more useless I seemed, the less she paid attention to me. And your father? Didn't he care? Pei Huan's expression darkened. Pei Fenghai is a scumbag. He forced himself on my mother, then accused her of seducing him. They owe her, and I'll make them pay for it. The next day, chaos erupted at Pei Corporation. A construction site for their new project was found to be using substandard materials, leading to a breach of contract and a massive lawsuit. Shortly after, the company was exposed for tax evasion and falsifying financial records. Within hours, Pei Corporation's stock plummeted, and the media was in a frenzy. At the same time, Pei's maternal family, the Zhous, faced their own crisis as their financial chain snapped under pressure. The once untouchable Pei Yi was now on the brink of collapse. He couldn't believe his useless younger brother was behind it all. Pei Yi was an A-rank alpha, the golden heir, while Pei Wan was just a beta, a bastard who grew up in the slums. How could someone like him possibly outmaneuver Pei Yi? But the truth was undeniable, and the fact that Pei Wan had stolen me right from under his nose only added fuel to the fire. Later that night, Pei Huan gently untangled himself from my arms and slipped into his study for a video conference. Since his second year of university, he had secretly built a tech company called Ocean. With his sharp business acumen and ruthless efficiency, Ocean had quickly risen to prominence, holding dozens of cutting-edge patents. The company's CEO was a mystery, never appearing in public or giving interviews. No one could have guessed that the man behind Ocean was the infamous playboy of the Pei family. As the camera turned on, the executives noticed the faint scratches on Pei Huan's neck. His assistant Xiao discreetly sent him a message, suggesting he cover them up, but Pei Huan only smirked, his fingers brushing over the marks. "My little wildcat left these," he said, his voice dripping with pride. The executives, used to his cold, calculating demeanor, were stunned by the warmth in his eyes. They quickly caught on, showering praise on the mysterious Mrs. Pei. For several minutes, Pei Huan, the man they privately called the King of Hell, looked utterly pleased. Once the meeting ended, Xiao stayed behind to update him on Pei Corporation's situation. Pei Huan's expression turned icy. "Proceed as planned. No mercy." The words of an alpha are as deceptive as a devil's whisper. They say one thing, but do another. As I thought about Pei Huan's mischievous antics from last night, I clutched my sore waist and kicked him hard. Pei Huan caught my ankle effortlessly, pulling me into his arms. "Starting something this early in the morning? Have you thought about the consequences?" I swallowed hard, silently putting some distance between us. After breakfast, Pei Huan suggested we meet his friends. Sensing my hesitation, he teased, "They say an ugly spouse fears meeting the in-laws. Are you scared to meet my friends?" I glared at him. "I'm not ugly and I'm not scared. Stop making things up." When we arrived, everyone was already there. After some polite greetings, I quietly sipped my juice in the corner. A strikingly beautiful Omega named Shen Jian approached me. As two Omegas, it was inevitable that we'd start venting about our alphas. Just as we were getting into it, our respective alphas interrupted. "Shen Jian, didn't we agree you wouldn't air our dirty laundry in public?" General Bai Junchuan pretended to be upset, though it was clear he was just playing along. Shen Jian, knowing full well it was an act, indulged him by feeding him grapes. The scene was so heartwarming it made me envious. "Don't be jealous. I'll feed you too," Pei Wan said, holding a grape to my lips. When I looked up, I was met with his warm, loving gaze, and my chest felt like it was on fire. I quickly looked away, unsure how to handle the intensity in his eyes. But Pei Huan wasn't about to let me off the hook. He leaned down, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Nai, as long as you're with me, you'll never have to envy anyone else. My feelings for you are anything but fleeting." After his chaotic rut, Pei Yi woke up to a splitting headache and the realization of what had happened over the past 7 days. The Omega beside him stirred, releasing pheromones that clung to Pei Yi's arm as he tried to snuggle closer. Pei Yi shoved him away, his voice cold and furious. "You set me up." The Omega trembled under the oppressive weight of Pei Yi's pheromones, his heart racing in fear. "Mr. Pei, please." "Get the mark removed," Pei Yi spat, his tone dripping with disdain. During those 7 days, Pei Corporation had descended into chaos. Shareholders were dumping their stocks, and despite his efforts, Pei Yi's assistant couldn't uncover who was behind the sabotage. Desperate for answers, Pei Yi stormed over to Pei Huan's apartment. When Yunai opened the door, the overwhelming scent of dark chocolate hit him like a punch to the gut. Seeing Pei Huan cooking in the kitchen, it all clicked. "Pei Huan, you've been pretending to be a beta," Pei Yi accused. Pei Huan didn't deny it. "If I were an alpha, your mother would have never let me live this long." Pei Yi's composure shattered. "He's your brother's fiancé. How could you?" Pei Huan smirked, pulling me closer. "Brother, don't be so harsh. You're scaring your future sister-in-law." Pei Yi turned to me, his eyes blazing. "Did you know? Were you in on this?" I rolled my eyes, refusing to dignify his paranoia with a response. Pei Yi's gaze flicked between us, his voice dripping with venom. Yaoi, do you really think he loves you? He's just using you to get back at me. Pei Huan laughed, his tone light but cutting. You give yourself too much credit, Pei Yi. I don't need to sacrifice my love life to deal with you. Pei Yi's hands shook with rage. Don't act so high and mighty. 2 months ago, Yaoi was still chasing after me. I'd had enough. Pei Yi, stop dragging me into your delusions. Pei Huan wrapped an arm around my waist, his eyes soft. It doesn't matter. As long as he's with me now, I don't care about the past. Pei Yi's face turned ashen. You think you've won? The Pei and Zhao family's foundations aren't so easily shaken. You've never beaten me before, and you never will. You and your mother will always be beneath me. I couldn't hold back anymore. I slapped him. Pei Yi liking you was the biggest mistake of my life. If anyone's beneath others, it's you. Pei Yi stared at me in shock. You hit me. For him? I slapped him again. Yes, and I'd do it again. You've insulted me countless times. 2 slaps are getting off easy. After Pei Yi left, Pei Huan held me tightly, his head resting on my shoulder like a wounded puppy. His mother was a sore subject, and Pei Yi's words had cut deep. I gently patted his back. If that lunatic ever shows up again, I'll help you take him down. Pei Huan didn't say anything, just pressed a soft kiss to my palm. The scandal surrounding Pei Corporation only grew. A video surfaced of Pei Yi forcing his Omega secretary to undergo mark removal surgery. The Omega begged on his knees, tears streaming down his face. Mr. Pei, I'm pregnant. If I do this, the baby won't survive. Pei Yi's response was cold and heartless. Then get rid of it. This child was never part of the plan. The video went viral, and public opinion turned against Pei Yi. Netizens were horrified by the man behind the polished facade. Soon, Pei Fanghai's past misdeeds were exposed. How he had assaulted a subordinate, then framed her as the seductress. Pei Yi's mother, Zhou Lanru, had harassed the woman relentlessly, driving her into poverty. The backlash was swift. The Pei family became social pariahs, and Pei Corporation eventually declared bankruptcy. To everyone's surprise, Ocean stepped in to acquire the company. On the day of the contract signing, Pei Huan arrived as Ocean's CEO. Pei Yi stared at him in disbelief. How? You're just a bastard from the slums. You could never surpass me. Pei Fanghai looked at his son with a mix of fear and regret. Why? I'm your father. How could you do this to me? Pei Huan's voice was ice. If it weren't for you, my mother wouldn't have been driven to work in a landfill, only to die of cancer. I'm collecting the debt you owe her. Pei Fanghai collapsed into his chair, aged a decade in moments. After taking over Pei Corporation, Pei Huan ordered a thorough audit. The investigation revealed over 10.7 billion star credits in tax evasion. The scandal rocked the entire star network, and Pei Fanghai was sentenced to life in prison. On the day of the verdict, Pei Huan changed his surname from Pei to Shen, his mother's name. From that day on, he was Shen Huan, not Pei Huan. He took me to visit his mother's grave, placing a bouquet of chrysanthemums before the tombstone. Mom, I finally made him pay, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I squeezed his hand. Auntie, don't worry. I'll take good care of him. Shen Huan smiled softly. Don't call her Auntie. Call her Mom. After acquiring Pei Corporation, Shen Huan worked tirelessly to restructure and integrate it into Ocean. One evening, as I waited for him to come home, I was ambushed by Pei Yi. He held a knife to my throat, his eyes wild with desperation. Shen Huan, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have lost everything. Pei Yi snarled. Shen Huan's voice was calm but tense. Pei Yi, let's talk this through. There's no need for violence. But Pei Yi was beyond reason. You took everything from me. Why should I listen to you? As Shen Huan tried to negotiate, I focused on Pei Yi's grip, recalling the self-defense techniques I'd learned. This wasn't over yet. The power disparity between Alpha and Omega is vast. There's only one chance. I must seize it. Shen Huan dropped to his knees, lowering himself in a submissive gesture. All right, I beg you. Pei Yi looked at him, trembling with excitement. I seized the opportunity, twisting away from his grasp, and with a quick push of my arm, I shoved him off and sprinted towards Shen Huan. Pei Yi, utterly enraged, surged forward to chase me. Shen Huan caught me in his arms, holding me tightly. A sharp blade pierced his lower back. The world suddenly became eerily silent, with only a buzzing sound filling my ears. In the chaos, another figure appeared, running toward Pei Yi with a knife raised. It was the Omega that Pei Yi had forced to abort their child. Pei Yi, you ruined me. Now I'll destroy you, he spat. Pei Yi was declared dead from the wound, while the Omega was sentenced for deliberate homicide. I received the news while I was slicing apples for Shen Huan. That stubborn man, taking advantage of his injury, insisted I wait on him hand and foot. I handed the sliced apple to him. He refused to take it. Shen Huan, stop pretending. It's your back that's hurt, not your hands. He said nothing, just gazed at me with a pitiful look in his eyes. Nai. I remembered how he had stepped in front of me without hesitation, and my heart softened. Shen Huan eagerly bit into the apple, turning to Xiao, my assistant. Xiao, when you're looking for a partner, look for someone like Nai. Not only does she know how to slice apples, she even feeds me. Xiao's face darkened as he was forced to endure the dog food. My face flushed, and I pinched Shen Huan, signaling him to be quiet. Shen Huan took the opportunity to grab my hand. Xiao, unable to stand it any longer, used work as an excuse to leave. That night, Shen Huan invited me to sleep in his bed. I was worried about putting pressure on his wound, and refused. It's been a week. The wound's almost healed. Besides, I sleep very soundly, he protested, his tone pitiful. The sly alpha released his pheromones, making it difficult for me to resist. As I lay down, his hands began wandering, betraying his intentions. His touch grew more insistent, and I could feel his warmth on my skin. With his pheromones filling the air, my thoughts began to cloud over. Using the last of my rationality, I held his hand down. No, Shen Huan, your wound isn't fully healed yet. His deep, magnetic voice murmured in my ear. I won't move. Nai, don't you want me? The rich scent of dark chocolate mixed with the subtle fragrance of bamboo. The moonlight, soft and fluid, cast its glow, and the air felt as if it too had become water.